You walked into a room today, and without saying a single word, without doing anything dramatic, without even being aware of it, you told everyone in that room exactly how much power you have. Not with what you said, with what you did. The small things, the things you assumed were invisible, the habits so deeply wired into you that you stopped noticing them years ago. Machiavelli understood something that almost no one alive today is willing to say out loud. Status is not what you claim. It is not your job title, your income, your follower count. Status is a signal, and that signal is broadcasting right now, constantly, through dozens of tiny behavioral tells that you are completely unaware of. The worst part? Most of the things that destroy your status in a room are things you were taught to do. Things that were framed as polite, as humble, as likable. Things that actually make the people around you, quietly, instinctively, file you in a lower category than you deserve. Today, we're going to change that. There are 7 behaviors on this list. Number 3 is the one that costs educated, ambitious, capable people the most, and it is the hardest one to see in yourself. Number 6 will make you rethink almost every conversation you've had in the last month. And number 7, the last one, is the one Machiavelli would call the most dangerous of all, because it is the only one that cannot be undone once people have seen it. Let's get into it. Number 1, over-explaining yourself in casual situations. Let me paint you a scene. You arrive somewhere slightly late, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15, and the moment you walk through the door, you launch into it. The traffic, the thing at work that ran over, the phone call you couldn't get out of. You give people 3 sentences when one would do, and one would do when none was needed. Machiavelli observed that a prince who constantly justifies his decisions to his subjects signals, above everything else, that he is uncertain those decisions were right. The justification itself is the confession. Most people over-explain in public not because anyone asked them to, but because they are anxious about being judged, and they're trying to preemptively argue their case before a jury that wasn't even convening. The problem is, the moment you start arguing the case, you summon the jury. High-status people do not explain their lateness. They apologize briefly, sincerely, once, and then they move on. Because people with real status understand something crucial. The longer you explain yourself, the smaller you sound. Every added sentence communicates, "I am still worried you think less of me," and the people around you pick that up. Not consciously, but it lands. Here is the rule. 1 sentence, then move forward. "Sorry I'm late, let's get into it." Full stop. No traffic report, no saga. The confidence in that brevity tells the room something words never could. The people you respect most in your life, the ones who carry a natural authority when they walk in, they don't explain themselves, they simply arrive. Number 2, seeking validation through humor. This one is uncomfortable to hear, so I need you to stay with me. Humor is one of the most powerful social tools a human being has. Done right, it creates warmth, diffuses tension, builds connection. Machiavelli himself acknowledged that a prince who can make people feel light in heavy moments holds a kind of power over them that logic alone never could. But there is a specific version of humor that destroys status, and it is the version that is actually seeking approval. You know the behavior. Maybe you know it in others. Maybe, if you're honest, you know it in yourself. It's the laugh at the end of your own joke before anyone else has responded, making sure the door is open for them to agree with you. It's the self-deprecating comment made slightly too loudly, in a slightly too public setting, reaching for a reaction. It's the joke that lands in the silence of a room, and then the look around, the checking, the monitoring, the quiet desperation to see if it worked. Status reads that scanning behavior immediately and files the person accordingly. Because someone who genuinely holds power in a room does not need the room's permission to have made a joke. They say it, they let it land or not, and they move on. The outcome is not their problem. The shift is subtle but total. Humor as a gift versus humor as a plea. One says, "I thought this was funny, make of it what you will." The other says, "Please like me." Only one of those builds your status. the other quietly chips at it every time. Number 3. Filling silence. This is the big one. This is the one I mentioned, the one that costs smart, capable, articulate people the most, because it is directly tied to their intelligence. And that is what makes it so hard to see. Most high-functioning, high-achieving people are uncomfortable with silence. Their minds move fast. They process quickly. They find gaps in conversation and instinctively fill them, because a gap feels like an invitation, and an invitation left unanswered feels like failure. But here is what Machiavelli understood, and what modern psychology has since confirmed in ways he could not have named, but certainly observed. Silence, in a social setting, distributes power to the person most comfortable holding it. Think about the most intimidating person you have ever been in a room with, the one who made you feel, somehow, slightly less certain of yourself just by being there. Did they talk the most? Almost certainly not. They talked the least, and when they did speak, it landed like a stone in still water, because every word had been chosen, and the choosing showed. When you rush to fill silence, you are not building connection. You are performing anxiety. You are telling every person in that room that you cannot tolerate the discomfort of not being heard, which tells them that the sound of your own voice is something you rely on to feel safe. The uncomfortable truth is this: words spoken into silence are worth 10 times the words spoken over noise, but only if you earned that silence first by not being afraid of it. The next time you are in a conversation and a pause opens up, try something difficult. Let it breathe for 1 full second longer than feels comfortable. You will feel the pull to fill it like a physical sensation. Resist it. Watch what happens to the energy in the room when you do. People will lean in. They will wonder what you are thinking. And the moment you do speak, after that held pause, they will listen in a way they simply don't when words come cheap and constant. Silence is not empty. In the hands of someone who knows how to hold it, silence is the most articulate statement in any room. Number 4. Physical contraction. Machiavelli never met a body language researcher, but he spent a lifetime studying how people present themselves in courts and in conflict, and he wrote extensively about the difference between a prince who enters a room and a prince who arrives in one. The difference was not height, it was not beauty, it was containment. Most people, when they are in a public situation that makes them slightly uncertain, a new social group, a professional setting, a place where they feel under-observed or over-observed, contract. Their shoulders come forward, their head drops slightly, their arms cross or find somewhere safe to be. They make themselves smaller, and then they wonder why people treat them as smaller. The body is not lying, the body is leading. This is the specific behavior to notice in yourself. What do you do with your hands when you're standing and not speaking? Most people fidget. They touch their face, their hair, their neck, their phone. They shift weight from foot to foot. All of it. Every single micro movement of that kind reads to the people around you as unease. And unease is the primary signal of low status. High status people are still, not rigid, still. There is a difference. Rigidity is tension. Stillness is command. Stillness says, I am comfortable in this space. Stillness says, this room does not need to approve of me before I decide to occupy it. The practical version of this is simple, though not easy. Plant your feet. Let your arms be relaxed rather than hiding something. Take up the space your body naturally occupies rather than apologizing for it. And when you are waiting, sitting, standing in a room, be still. You will notice people starting conversations with you more. You will notice people unconsciously orienting toward you rather than away. Not because you did anything extraordinary, because you stopped telling them, through your body, that you weren't sure you deserved to be there. Number 5. Agreeing with whoever spoke last. This one is so common and so deeply socially rewarded in certain environments that many people have no idea they are doing it. Here is the pattern. A group conversation is happening. Person A makes an argument. You nod, you agree, you add a supporting point. Then person B makes the counter-argument, and you nod again. You find merit in that too. You add a supporting point there as well. And the conversation continues, and you continue shifting with it, always agreeing with whoever is currently speaking, because disagreement feels risky, and agreement feels safe. Machiavelli, in The Prince, was blunt about this behavior. He called it the behavior of the flatterer, and he wrote that a prince surrounded by flatterers eventually cannot tell truth from decoration, cannot distinguish a real ally from a comfortable mirror. He was writing about advisors to rulers, but the pattern applies to you in every room you have ever walked into. When you agree reflexively, when your opinion shifts based on the last voice rather than your own considered view, people around you notice, not because they are evaluating you consciously, but because the brain is wired to detect consistency, and inconsistency signals someone whose opinion is cheap because it costs them nothing to change it. The person whose opinion is hard to earn. The person who disagrees quietly but firmly when they actually disagree. The person who does not rush to soften their view the moment someone pushes back. That is the person whose agreement, when it does come, means something. That is the person people call when the decision actually matters. You do not need to be contrarian. You do not need to argue for sport. You simply need to know what you actually think before someone else's voice tells you what to think, and then hold it. Hold it calmly, respectfully, and without apology. Number 6. Name dropping and borrowed status. Here is the uncomfortable mirror. Look directly at it. Have you ever been in a conversation and felt the pull, subtle, almost involuntary, to mention who you know? The person at the company everyone's heard of, the friend with the impressive title, the place you went to school, the event you attended, the thing you were part of. Not because it was relevant, but because the silence after someone else said something impressive felt like a gap that needed filling with proof that you are also worth listening to. That impulse, that reaching for borrowed authority, is one of the most expensive things a person can do to their own status in a room. And it is expensive precisely because it works in the short term. People nod. They look slightly more interested, and then they file you in a very specific category, someone who borrows rather than holds. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who rules through his own ability holds his position absolutely. A prince who rules through the fortune of others holds it only as long as that fortune lasts. He was talking about governance, but the psychology is identical. When you name drop, you are not raising your status to the level of the name. You are publicly announcing that you believe your own status is insufficient and you need reinforcement from elsewhere. The name you drop is not a step up for you, it is a confession. The people in any room who have the highest actual status almost never do this. They don't need to. They talk about ideas, about what they've observed, about what they think, not about who they've met, what they've attended, or what impressive thing they happen to be adjacent to. The moment you catch yourself reaching for a name or a credential in a conversation that didn't require it, that is the moment to stop and ask yourself what you were actually trying to prove, and whether proving it that way just did the opposite. Number 7. Performing busyness. We have arrived at the last one, the most dangerous one, the one that, once people have seen it enough times from you, cannot be walked back. There is a performance that has become so culturally normalized in the last 15 years that most people have completely stopped seeing it as a performance at all. It is the performance of busyness. You know it. You have done it. You may be doing it right now. It is the sigh when someone asks how you are, followed immediately by, honestly insane. I've barely had a second to breathe. It is checking your phone in a conversation, not because something urgent came in, but because someone should be watching you check your phone. It is the slightly harried energy, the I have so much going on, the way you reference your schedule as evidence of your importance. Machiavelli would destroy this behavior in a single line, and the line would be this: a prince who needs you to know how busy he is telling you he is not sure he is important enough to be taken seriously without the evidence. Real power does not perform. Real power arrives unhurried. It has the time it has because it decides what deserves its time, not because it is being swept along by the demands of others. Here is what people sense, unconsciously, when someone performs busyness around them. They sense they are being told they are not worth your full presence. And human beings, no matter how politely they receive that signal, do not like it. They pull slightly back. They stop bringing you the things that matter. They route around you. Because the message underneath the performance, beneath every "I'm slammed" and every phone glance, is "my attention is somewhere else." And wherever your attention is, that is where your loyalty, your capability, and your actual power live. Not here, not with them. The highest status person in any room is the one who, when you are talking to them, makes you feel like you have their full and genuine attention. No glances, no sighs, no ambient communication that their mind is already somewhere more important. Just presence, complete, unhurried presence. That is rarer than talent, rarer than wealth, And it is the single quality that, once people feel it from you, changes every interaction they have with you for the rest of time. This is the one that cannot be undone once broken. You can recover from being seen as nervous or too agreeable or too loud. But once people have calibrated to you as someone who performs your own importance, recalibrating that takes years. It takes consistent, patient, quiet behavior that contradicts the impression they've stored. It is so much easier to never let them store it in the first place. 7 things, 7 behaviors, none of them dramatic, none of them obvious, and every single one of them silently broadcasting something about you in every public space you enter. Over-explaining yourself when no one asked for an explanation. Using humor to seek approval instead of to give something. Filling every silence as though silence itself is a threat. Physically contracting in the spaces you occupy, apologizing for your own presence without a word, agreeing with whoever spoke last instead of knowing what you actually think, reaching for borrowed status, names, credentials, adjacency, to fill the gap where your own authority should stand, and performing busyness as though the appearance of demand is the same thing as the reality of worth. These are not character flaws, they are habits. Most of them were taught to you, some of them were reinforced by the exact environments that should have corrected them, and none of them reflect who you actually are or what you are actually capable of. They are simply patterns, and patterns can change. I want to say one thing to you before you go, and I want to say it directly. The reason these 7 things are so hard to address is not because they're complicated. It's because they come from somewhere real. The over-explaining comes from a fear of being judged. The approval-seeking humor comes from wanting to be liked. The filled silences come from a mind that is genuinely alive and moving. The contracted posture comes from environments that made you feel like too much. The constant agreement comes from a desire not to cause pain. Every single behavior on this list has a human origin. Something kind, something protective, something that once made sense. Machiavelli did not believe people were weak for having those instincts. He believed they were weak for letting those instincts govern their public behavior without ever questioning whether that instinct was still serving them. You are not at that table anymore. You are not in that classroom, that household, that relationship where making yourself smaller kept you safe. You are in rooms now where making yourself smaller keeps you invisible, and invisible people do not build the things they came here to build, or reach the people they came here to reach, or leave the marks they know. Somewhere under all the noise, they were meant to leave. You have everything you need, you always did. The only thing that needs to change is what you let the room see. If you watch this to the end, you are not the average person. The average person clicks away. You stayed, which means something in this connected, and my job now is to make sure what comes next is worth the same level of attention. There is more. More from Machiavelli, more from the psychology of status and power, more of the uncomfortable truths that the people around you are operating by whether you know it or not. And the next one goes even deeper. If this meant something to you, if even one of these 7 things landed and you thought, that is me, and I didn't know it, hit that like button right now. It is the clearest signal you can send me that this is the content you want more of. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, because the next one is already in progress, and I built it specifically for the person who made it to the end of this one. I will see you there.